I'm from Belgium, and since I think 84, I started to be interested in what kind of people are abducting children, raping them and murdering them. And it all started with a little boy of 6 years in the middle of Brussels who disappeared. It was in 84. They never found him. There was no investigation. And I had a friend, police officer, and I asked, "What are you doing about Kevreya Kavas?" He said, "Well, what do you mean?" I said, "Well, aren't you looking at him?" He said, "No." I said, "Why not? We are waiting for information." I was stunned. I thought, for a 6-year-old, you just stopped the world from turning. I had a 6-year-old daughter at that moment. I couldn't understand. So I started to look for information. What kind of people are these? In Belgium, I found nothing. In the Netherlands, never. It is especially the Anglo-Saxon countries who were 10, 20 years ahead. England, the United States. And so I started studying abroad, because there was nothing in my own country, about what kind of people are these? Why do they do this? How can we avoid this tremendous pain, not only for the victim, but for a whole society to stop? And so I went to England, and there I was part of the staff of the Graceful Institute, where they treated child sex offenders, women and men. And this was the first time I heard about women pedocriminal. I didn't know they existed. And I did the whole path. I went to France, the Centre International de Sciences Criminelles de Paris. There was another one where they wanted to make a bridge between psychology and the Justice Department. Then I went to the American University in Washington, D.C. I had practice placement at the FBI in Quantico. I went to the University of Liverpool, investigative psychology in the United Kingdom. And then, okay, you have to pay everything yourself because nobody's gonna help you. But and I started working with victims and with criminals, because there is an interaction between both. The victim is chosen. The criminal chooses. Why does this criminal choose this victim? It's important to know. And so I started treating both victims of sexual violence and offenders. And to give you an example, one offender said to me, "But the child liked this." And I was wondering, yes, maybe why not? They are not all violent. They can be very nice and caress the child, and maybe the child enjoyed this. Who am I to say that it's not allowed? And then I listened to the victim, in this specific case, the victim of this offender, because most of the time it's not the case. And then I asked the victim, I said, "How do you know she liked it?" And then he said, "Because she was laughing." Okay, it's registered. A few weeks later, I see the victim and I ask her, she was 10 years old, and I said, "Well, I'm gonna ask you a very difficult question. While he abused you, how did you react?" And she was really embarrassed. She didn't know what to say. She said, well, I was embarrassed. I felt so dirty." And he said, "Yes, but what did you do?" She said, "I laughed. Because I didn't know what to do. I laughed." And all of a sudden, I realized that the offender was not lying. She did indeed laugh, but his observations were right, but his interpretations were wrong. She was not laughing because she liked it. She was laughing because she felt embarrassed. She didn't know what to do. And that's the thing you can only learn when you have both. How do you choose them? Where do you get these victims and all this? And then how does the victim react too? What kind of reactions make that an offender stops offending? Sometimes they are very basic. I'm gonna say it very flat, shitting in your pants. And their fantasies are broken. Oh God, no. Because they are on fantasies. It's the same in these networks, they are on fantasies. That's why they need symbols and they need ornaments and especially the name Satan. Because, wow, this is the ultimate fantasy. I'm doing this in the name of Satan. It's a big lie. It's a big lie. They do it because they like it. They want to do it. It's a choice. And we have to stop believing all these fantasies around it. Like, I did it in the name of Allah. I don't think Allah would like what they are doing. It's all a lie. You do it because you like it. You do it because it's your choice to kill people. Because you are feeling bad. That's why you want to take revenge on people, innocent people, because you are not able to solve your own problems. And it's the same in these networks, and it's the same in the name of God, where we killed millions of people in the name of God. It's again abuse of something else, because they are too coward to say, I do it because I like it. Some psychopaths do say that when they are captured. But most of them are going to start to find excuses for their behavior, because otherwise they know they will be expelled from society, and then it's difficult to survive. So I started to study all this, and then I wrote 20 books about the subject to make people aware that the way we are handling this problem is not the best way. For instance, the campaigns to protect children, for me, they are constructed by pedocriminals. Because the focus is on the victim. It's up to the child to say no. Say no. I have criminals who raped 3-month-old babies. How do you want them to say no? How do you want a child of 3 years knowing what the law says about that? It's up to the adult to say no, and not the children. So I want campaigns, and I'm advocating for this for 20 years. I want campaigns where the focus is on the offenders, the criminals. We are watching you. We are not accepting what you are doing. Your hands off our children. Because now they are free to do what they want. Nobody is watching them. Well, that will change. I can assure you, we'll change that. Now, the question people ask most of the time is, why do these people do this? You have several categories of people and profiles of people. You have those who are organized, who have a family, who are married and all this. And then you have the more impulsive offenders, as I call them. They have very low social skills. They have poor relations with others and with peers. In both categories, you can find people who have been abused and raped in their childhood. But not all of them are abused. A pedosexual, in general, makes between 120 and 150 victims during his sexual active life, which means between 15 years and 65 years. Of these 150 victims, let's say 10% become themselves abusers. Why do they become abusers? Because they know how humiliating this is to be raped. To cope with the pain and the disarray and the feeling of feeling lost, they start using elements from the abuse in their fantasies, and sometimes very early on. we can detect this at the age of 6 or 7 years old already, that they want to gain control over who they are because they lost part. That's the feeling they have. They lost part of themselves. And so what do? They do the same as offenders. They take the weaker. And the weaker are animals to start with. They torture animals, or they hurt children. Even young, they take younger children or handicapped people or elderly, weaker victims than themselves. Why? Because they can't afford to have another humiliation. If they take somebody from their own level, the chances are they lose again. And especially if they take somebody who's even higher level, the chances are even bigger they lose. And for their self-esteem, it's devastating. So to get this feeling, the God-alike feeling, the feeling to be in control, they are forced to take somebody weaker. Of course, it says a lot about the criminal, because it means he's a coward. It's easy to take a weaker victim and then feel God. But they work in circles, and each has his own circle of offending. For instance, if we go to the more impulsive types, they argue with their mother because they don't feel good. They don't know why, but instead of looking, why am I feeling bad, they started, it's somebody else's fault. It's always somebody else's fault, So they project their feeling on somebody else. Then this person argues and says, no, this is not true. And then, they're fed up. They go out. They go to a bar. They start drinking. So then their brakes are loosening because of the alcohol. And then in the bar, they start having arguments with other clients, and then they leave because, nobody loves me, I'm all alone, poor me, somebody's gonna pay for this because I'm not gonna sit here with all these feelings. And they go trekking, and they see a woman alone or a child alone, and then they groom it. But very short time, with impulsive types, very short time, and then they isolate the victim, rape it, sometimes murder it, and then their circle is going up. It's not my fault. What did she do at that time of the night alone in the streets? And why did she have such a short skirt? So it's always excuse. It's always somebody else's fault. And then they go back to, well, anyway, I didn't kill her, so it's okay. And there are worse things than this. Look at the wars. They're killing thousands of children, so I only killed one. They use excuses, and then they feel in control again, and they're up in their cycle. And then it can go good for a while. But then after a while, there's always something wrong in our lives, in all of us, the lives of all of us. And then again, they have a problem, they lost their job, and it's somebody else's fault. It's all a question of take your own responsibility. If you have a problem, accept it and do something about it. Don't project it on others. And that's what my lecture is going to be about. We have to stop focusing on children. We have to shed lights on the responsibles and the criminal from this criminal. The responsibility, put it where it belongs. And stop thinking that it is some occult, very complicated thing, these satanic networks. It is not. That's what they want you to believe, because it makes their fantasy complete. Don't walk into their fantasies. They do it because they like it. And sometimes, what we see now is more and more, that children are sacrificed, even in gruesome ways, so that you are trapped for the rest of your life. You sold your soul to them, and they have proof of that. So you will be a slave forever. For them, you will be a slave forever, unless you are ready to take responsibility for what you've done, and also prison time. At least, maybe then you can get your soul back. But there has to be balance between what you did, the punishment you get, and what a victim gets out of this, or victims. But we have to stop this circle. You know, a society is very, very simple. What does a society want if things go wrong? Whether it is robbery or a bombing attack or raping children, it wants three things. One, it wants the criminal to pay for what he did. Whether it is prison, fines, it doesn't matter, pay. And the most beneficial is they go to jail for what they've done. And they have to accept this. The second thing a society wants is reparation. How are you going to repair the damage that you did, not only to this specific victim, but to a whole society, especially if we're talking about children. A whole society is damaged, seriously hurt. How are you going to pay that? There are many ways to do that. After you did your prison time, you can engage in welfare work for free and do this part of the healing of a society. The third point is relapse, prevent relapse, so that this person will never hurt people again. And there then you have therapy and or they stay in prison forever. Some people are too dangerous to be amongst us. And we have to accept them, and they themselves have to respect it and accept it. So it's not that easy. Why do justice departments not do what they have to do? No, they are trying now to make pedosexuality as something normal, like homosexuality. It is not, okay? Anthropological research has showed that genetically people will never accept abuse of children, never. It is not a feeling of being, I don't know exactly how to say it, but it's a choice. They choose to hurt children, and it's nothing else, whether they are in networks, individuals, peers, it's a choice. And they themselves can say at any moment, no, I'm not going to do it. And it's not up to a victim to say no. It's up to the adult, the criminal. That's what my lecture is going to be about. Now, if we look at the scale of this kind of abuse on a world level, by now it must be tremendous. Because it's the only taboo left to blackmail people on very high positions, not only high, but important positions too. So before, if you were a homosexual and you were a minister or you had a high level job, you could be blackmailed. If you went to orgies with adults, they could blackmail you. If you had an affair and your wife wasn't aware, they could blackmail you. But all this is not, people have become very, how will I say, well, they don't care that much anymore. So the only taboo that is left is child sex abuse. And they use it everywhere now, in the banking system, in the politics. Politicians are very, very often blackmailable, I'll tell it like that. And they have no other choice than do this job and obey, because they are slaves. Once you go to this low level, you are the slave of the power forever, unless you take your responsibility. But who will do that? You know, there are so many benefits involved: money, statute, red carpet, and they prefer to lie to themselves and saying, well, it's all not, look what I have in return. It's all not that bad. And I think it's going to get worse with the years if we don't do anything now. Many parents are renting their children for a lot of money to networks, especially to networks. If we see it on a world level, we see that, of course, with all the facilities from transportation, they have their private planes in the high levels, they have their helicopters, they have their contacts, they don't have to pass controls, they have their own world parallel to ours. And a lot of children are trafficked all over the planet for the same reason, blackmail high officials. And many people think, well, that would never happen to me, but they have their system. It starts with you're invited to a high-level party and wow, your ego. They caress your ego. And then, well, you have a drink and another drink and good champagne, and then there's a little bit of cocaine and they bring you to a point where you lose control over who you really are. And then, it's the ultimate thing you have to do to be part of them. But it takes weeks. It's not in one day. They have time, and then they bring you to a room, and you think, oh, it's gonna be a prostitute. Well, that's a price I want to pay, right? And then the doors open. There's a child of 4 years old. I can assure you, most of them, are awakened again and are sober. But these children are trained. They are trained since 2 years, 1 year old. They are trained to suck on bottles of lemonade. They are trained. And if they don't succeed in getting this person in a compromising situation, they are punished hardly physically. They hit these children. So they just like it is with prostitutes. It looks like they like it because, but they have no other choice. For children, it's the same. They are programmed to do certain acts. And it can take a while, but I know of one person, one victim, who told me that, I'm not going to name names, but a very high sport man. And he said, no, I'm not going to do this, because there are cameras everywhere in the room. They don't know that, but the children know that. And it came after weeks of trying to get him in a compromising situation. The girl said, but sir, I like doing this. I like sucking cocks. I've always liked it. And if I don't do this, they're gonna hit me hard. And so this man, who really didn't want to do this, he allowed her to suck his penis. Now, later on, this victim, when she grew older, wrote a book about these networks, these gruesome networks. And the person in question was sure that she wrote about him and he committed suicide. Yeah. And it was somebody known in the world. You see the damages not only for the children, but also for people who are trapped in such evil game where children are used to do the ultimate evil. So we have to stop this for the sake of everybody.